Hello and welcome to episode 17 of the Gangrene Against the World podcast. I'm Allan Simon. It is week 4 in the NFL season. The New York Jets are 0-3, and they are about to face their division rivals, the Miami Dolphins, who are also 0-3 on Monday Night Football, part of a Monday Night Football doubleheader. When ESPN lined up these two games, I'm sure they thought that Jets-Dolphins and then Broncos-Bengals would be a little bit more exciting, but this is what you get. For the Jets, it is very, very simple. Win a football game. It is time to throw out all the excuses. No more Aaron Glenn's staff is new. No more Steve Wilks is figuring it out with these rotational pieces. You have who you have on this roster. They did make a adjustment and a trade that seems pretty nice for Jarvis Brownlee Jr., cornerback in his second year from the Titans. And if you want to know if the Jets won that trade or not, go look at Titans Twitter right now. They are very upset. A guy in a rookie contract, was a late round pick, was good last year, commits a lot of penalties, but very good in zone defense, tackles pretty well, and right away is the second best corner on this team. Only problem, he only has one working foot right now, so once he gets healthy, he will be playing on the other side of Sauce Gardner. So for this week, your roster is who your roster is. It's going to be a lot of the same guys from last week. Overall, the Miami Dolphins are a dumpster fire. They are likely to be the first team to fire their head coach. I would not be surprised if the Jets win this game, if it's McDaniel's last game. But overall, the Dolphins rank towards the bottom in almost every meaningful category. They grade out as the worst defense overall in football. They have a terrible pass blocking scheme, and their offensive line gives up a lot of pressure, so it should be open season for the Jets front four, but you just need to win the game. There's only so much you can say. You are an 0-3 team. If you lose to the Dolphins, the season is over. It is open season on the staff. The honeymoon from Darren Muji is well over. You know, he has his fingerprints all over this team. His signings have not worked out so far. Brandon Stevens is a disaster. You don't have a wide receiver 2. You don't have more depth at the defensive line. This could get really, really ugly, especially when the football week is mostly over and everyone's going to be focused on this Jets game. And I think a lot of people are going to tune in just to see the wreckage of these two teams having a slap fight on Monday Night Football. But if you go to 1-3 and you find a way to win on Monday like you should, then you get a Cowboys team at home that does not look very good, that got blown out by the Bears last week. Seems like things are crumbling there under former Jet coach and current Cowboy head coach Brian Schottenheimer. If you win, all of a sudden there's a little bit of hope in this season. You know, before the bye week, you have games against the Bengals. You have games against the Panthers. You play against the Broncos. And right now, you know, they have a young quarterback in Bo Nix who is rated the worst QB in the league currently, although I think he'll get better. There are wins on this schedule, theoretically. But what every other team is saying, I can't wait until we play the Jets because we can beat the Jets. It also seems that this week now you might get Justin Fields back, and against a bad defense, he should be able to run around a little bit and make some noise. The Dolphins give up a lot of points. Everything is shaping up for the Jets right now to take back control of this season, find a way to be 3-5 or 4-4 as you get to week 9, and just do the things you're supposed to do. Gives you time to get a little healthier as well, you know, again, with Jermaine Johnson out. And although it looks like Josh Reynolds will play this week, or at least he's trending in that direction, Tony Adams looks like he's working his way back. He was limited today. Kene Nwangwu can hopefully come back and settle up the return game. Josh Reynolds was practicing for the first time in a while. Jay Tufele looks like he's working his way back from an illness. And Justin Fields, if he clears concussion protocol, he will be playing on Monday night. He was a full participant in practice today. So things are shaping up. But on the flip side, the Dolphins are saying, hey, this is our chance to take our season back, and this is our chance to get back on track. We did not quit on Mike McDaniels. We showed on Thursday night last week that, you know, we fought against the Bills. They've had a long time to prepare for this Jets team that frankly doesn't take a lot of preparing. You know, stop Breece Hall, swallow up Garrett Wilson the best you can, and you're probably in good shape. So overall, it is very clear the defense needs to be better this week against a shaky offense, although we know that Tua can put up points when situations are good. Will McDonald and Quinnen Williams have to have a great day. Quinnen Williams was a beast last week, but his tackling grades have been really poor. Overall, the team is missing a lot of tackles. We know about the viral video of the over pursuit of 8 guys chasing after Bucky Irving. All that needs to get better. Quincy Williams, didn't mention him yet. He's on the IR. He'll be out for multiple weeks, which means that this already thin linebacking crew is going to really rely on some guys who have not played great. McCrary Ball is also on the IR. So, injuries are certainly a factor, but if the front four can make some noise against a susceptible pass blocking team, then I think this all could go their way. We'll get into predictions coming up. I'll give you the 5 keys to the game in a little bit, but coming up next, after a clip from a famous moment in Jets-Dolphins history, I am so excited. Reunited. It's been 12 years since I spoke on a microphone about sports with my friend Dom Papa, my former co-host of the Sports Drive, and we've been waiting a long time. Since this launched, I already had him written down for Dolphins Week. No one knows the Miami Dolphins better than Dom Papa. So here's a clip from Jets-Dolphins history, and then we're going to mix it up with the great Dom Papa.
Fake to Martin, then a dump, and it is juggled and caught by Jumbo Elliott.
That Jumbo, they had the hands team in.
The tackle lines up as an eligible receiver at the end of the line. He's open, he's juggling, he's falling down. Remember, it was ruled a touchdown, so what they have to see is conclusive evidence that it wasn't.
And
not the reverse.
to go along with the fake and everything, he didn't take his gloves off. He's got his blocking gloves on, and he's got himself a touchdown.
He does.
Welcome back to the Gangrene Against the World podcast. Allan Simon here, and this is a reunion 12 years in the making. It's been about 12 years since I spoke to Dom Papa about sports. We were the co-hosts of the always nominated but never winning Sports Drive in Wayne, New Jersey. And as soon as I knew I was launching this thing, I knew who I was going to write in for Dolphins games. No one knows the Dolphins better than Dom Papa. No one has more to say, and my text messages can prove that. And I want to first off say, Dom, thanks for joining on today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Allan. It's exciting. It's been 12 years, like you said, and neither team has won a playoff game, so we still sit here in this misery that we've always had.
We sure have. Not much has changed, really. The Jets have one winning season since we did our last show together, and I don't think the Dolphins won a playoff game since 2000, right? So
since I was 9 years old,
yeah.
the last it's been a long time coming, and I don't think it's going to happen anytime this year. So
it doesn't look like it. And when we were talking before the season started, and I want to preface this, it is our jobs as fans to talk ourselves into why a season could be positive. And I think a lot of the things you were saying heading in made a lot of sense. And both teams had tough schedules to start the year, for sure. But I just want to give you the floor. What have you made of this start for the Dolphins overall? And what are the things that you expected to be better but aren't as we kind of kick off and head into week 4?
Well, I mean, starting with the Indianapolis Colts, where you thought you were getting a win easily in week 1 after what we saw from Daniel Jones all these years in New York. Starting off with just a total blowout 33 loss. I mean, you kind of knew it wasn't going to be the season that you wanted it to be. I think we spoke earlier in the season, and my thoughts on the Dolphins were they can't possibly bottom out, was my opinion. I thought they'd be an average team, rebuilding, reloading, as they want to call it, however you want to spin it, this whole letting big contract older players go. All good, no problem at all, accumulate draft picks. But all of a sudden, you're looking at the schedule and you're seeing Drake May twice and Justin Fields twice and whoever's going to play quarterback for the Browns in a couple of weeks and it's whoever's going to be the Saints quarterback at that point and Daniel Jones and Michael Penix. And you look at the schedule and you're like, there's just no possible way that this team can bottom out. Like, you look at the schedule and you just say that just by pure chance, they're going to win 7, 8 games because of who they're playing. And then Daniel Jones and Drake May light them up for 300 yards each the first 2 weeks. And you're like, okay, maybe I might have been incorrect on that. It was nice to see a little bit of fight against Buffalo. You kind of pencil that as a loss when you look at the beginning of the season on a Thursday night, away game, Buffalo, true Super Bowl contender. But you're even looking at it and you're like, all right, even if they lose one of those first 2 games, 1-2, and now you're sitting at 0-3, and you got a pivotal Monday night game at home against the 0-3 Jets. And if the season's not going to turn around now, then it's just not going to.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I said about the Jets before you hopped on. Is it's now or never, and if the Jets don't win Monday, then the season is over, and set everything ablaze, and Aaron Glenn will be under fire, and Darren Muji's honeymoon is over. But the Dolphins are saying the same exact thing. You play a Daniel Jones team that actually looks pretty good, and Daniel Jones is finally leaves the leash of Brian Dable, and he's an MVP candidate. You lose a tough one to the Patriots, but it's a divisional matchup, and you showed a lot of fight against the Bills, and like you said, both teams' schedule opens up after this. So, what did you take away from the fight they showed against the Bills? And did that give you any sense that, hey, maybe Mike McDaniel's job can, be safe for a little bit longer because they play?
Yeah, it definitely gave you a little bit of hope for the season. Mike McDaniel, my opinion on him was I was fine with them bringing him back. Obviously, this 0-3 is not looking good for him, but the Dolphins and the Jets are in similar situations right now. It's kind of like that Spider-Man meme when everybody's pointing at each other, and they both have Carolina coming up. I know the Jets have, Dallas and Cincinnati. Miami's got, Carolina, the Jets. They have Cleveland on the schedule coming up, and you're both kind of sitting there in the same predicament when you're like, hey, we could win some of these games. And that's kind of how I look at it with Mike McDaniel is in your next 4, you're going to play the Jets, you're going to play Carolina. Then they got a tough one at home against the Chargers, but it's followed by the Browns and the Falcons. So you look at it and you look at that and you say, there's 4 winnable games on there. And while the Chargers are good, they're not beating up on anybody either. So you look at this little soft part of the schedule and you said, if McDaniel's going to keep his job, this is the time to do it. You win 3 of those 5, you might have a chance. The big thing I'm looking at is they have a Thursday night home game against Baltimore at the end of October. And I think if he doesn't win more than 2 of these upcoming games, that kind of feels like the spot that it would make sense. Thursday night, you probably lose on national TV for a second or third time this season against a true Super Bowl contender. And you get that 11-day break until you play the Bills at home a week and a half later. That kind of feels like the spot it would be if it doesn't work out. But I think the hope right now in that building, even Ross seems pretty committed to him at the moment. I know that we can, you could say whatever you want about that. But you win 3 or 4 of these games and all of a sudden the season's back on. Is that reality? Probably not. But as fans, we always try to have that little bit of hope. I think it was you who told me years ago, you look at that schedule every year before the season and everybody says 11-5. You come up with it's 11-5. And, right now I'm looking at it and I'm like, well, I don't see 11 wins. So how are we getting to 8 or 9?
Yeah, that's it. Well, at least don't be 5, right? And yeah, it's funny that you talk about the Spider-Man. I mean, we are really mirroring each other in what our hopes are, right? Just be competitive until November, December. I mean, I think of all the games we've watched, at least on the Jets side, that the season's over by then. And for you all, you've got to also see, right, is Tua the guy? Like, and this is a real test for him too.
I think so too. And this year, listen, he hasn't looked great. He's never had the best of arms, and that's, always been evident. But this year, there's something going on there. I don't know if it's the hip injury that he suffered last year after the broken hip in college, maybe a re-aggravation. I mean, that's just what kind of skeptical of all that going on, but he just doesn't look the same. Their big plan this year was to improve the offensive line around him. And they drafted Jonas Savaiinaea in the 2nd round. He probably shouldn't be playing yet. He has not looked good at left guard. You went out and you got James Daniels in free agency at right guard. He's got a good history with Pittsburgh. He gets hurt after 5 plays with a pec injury. Austin Jackson re-aggravates a toe injury. So you're playing right now with what, by Pro Football Focus grades, are the 65th and 66th guards in the league in Keon Smith, who's a backup practice squad type guy, Jonas Savaiinaea, who's supposed to be a big part of this offense, and it hasn't worked out, and they've asked a lot of that. Now, is Tua just feeling the pressure? It kind of looks so like that. He has been very, very happy feet in the pocket, trying to get rid of the ball a little bit quick. I mean, last week, he did not look good and he did not get sacked. So
Yeah.
you kind of look at this and you say to yourself, well, what's the problem? Is it the offensive line? He is under constant stress, but the fact that he's not getting sacked with this constant pressure, to me, feels like he's trying to get the ball out a little bit too quickly, make too quick of decisions. And it's just been a struggle.
Yeah, and when you mentioned PFF grades, I was pulling it up, and they're the third worst pass blocking team in the league right now. And the Jets don't have a deep pass rush, but they do have Will McDonald and Quinnen Williams, and that needs to be one of the keys for the Jets, is that they gotta make Tua feel the pressure, and I think it makes sense if Tua's not feeling 100% already, that he's gonna have happy feet. He doesn't want to get hit in the pocket. He's not a threat to run on any moment, and it's probably because he doesn't want to take a lot of hits. And then if you pull the thread even more, you got a Tyreek Hill situation that, forget about the fact that he can never keep his hands to himself. It seems like he's very open to being traded, and that a trade could happen if this falls apart. So do you see Tyreek Hill being on this roster for football reasons?
Yeah, well, we'll leave all the other stuff aside. And for football reasons, I do. I don't think they're going to be looking at trading him right now, at least. And the only reason I say that is you've got a dead man walking in Mike McDaniel and Chris Greer. I mean, you cannot possibly trade your best player on offense, your best playmaker, and expect things to get better, right? I mean, you try to get rid of Tyreek. What's their offense? It's Jalen Waddle, a 5'7" Malik Washington, who's a nice player. Nick Westbrook-Ikine has been kind of a disappointment. We're getting Darren Waller back, so I guess you can get
there you go
about that, right? I mean, reinforcements are on their way. I just don't see it. I've been saying it since last year. You kept seeing all the trade rumors, and everybody's trying to push this issue, and he's still on the team. Well, why is he still on the team now? You could probably get decent value for him, but at this point, how can you do that if you're McDaniel and Greer? You're going to get rid of your best offensive weapon? It just doesn't make any sense to me at this point.
Yeah, and this is where when you have a situation with a head coach whose job is on the line and a staff with the job on the line.
Oh, absolutely. We're with Brian Dable right now.
Yeah, and do you want them making these decisions too, right? And that's why firing Mike McDaniel after 3 weeks, lost last week, or 4 weeks if they lose on Monday, at that point, it's like, well, then why'd you bring him back at all? Absolutely. The Jets went through it with Saleh last year. And would you get a sense from Dolphins fans that they're ready to just burn it all down? Or how do Dolphins fans feel right now about McDaniel and about Tua?
It feels like they're ready to burn it all down. I mean, they got the banners flying at this point over the stadium. It's just been a total disaster. I think the faith is starting to get lost in Tua a little bit. And it's for good reason. He just hasn't played well. He didn't finish great last year after all the concussion issues. And listen, that stuff's totally different. I understand with the concussion stuff. If he's a little skittish in the pocket because of that stuff, it just makes sense. But he just has not looked the same since he came back from injury last year. And I think you have a tale of two different teams in this, right? You have the Dolphins, who are, you have a $50 million a year quarterback. And was he really worth that? Last year, before the season, he kind of had this quote that he said, hey, the market is the market when looking for a contract extension. And that quote, you just keep coming back to it and saying, well, that's the market, but are you worth the market? And the answer has been astoundingly no so far.
Yeah, definitely. And you look at the offense one step further, it seemed like a lot of people were excited about Ollie Gordon coming into the year, and he has not been able to have the huge plays they expected or to be a difference maker so far in the offense. Do you think that it's just a young player getting used to a system, or is just the scheme not fitting him? Why hasn't he been able to get going?
I think they're starting to incorporate him a little bit. You saw it on Thursday night, his career high in carries. I think he had 9 carries for like 31 yards, had a touchdown. They started giving him the ball in those short yard situations, which last year they were 32nd in the league in 3rd and 1 and 4th and 1 conversions. So they've started to get a big back. He's 6'2", 230. Former Doak Award winner. I mean, he's a really good player who had a bad year at Oklahoma State as a senior, which was very, very strange. You don't see that often. I think he will get more involved in the offense. It seems like they're starting to ramp up a little package of plays for him because Devon Achane, as good as he is, you can't give him the ball 20 times a game to run it up the middle. He's 5'8". It just hasn't worked. You didn't see it work last year. 2 years ago, they had a lot of success on the ground with him when they had Raheem Mostert, who was also playing very well. So I think the Ollie Gordon seems like he's going to start to be a little bit more incorporated to the offense. And I think he gives them a different dimension that they haven't had last year. I definitely don't have anything else like him on the roster. With a little bit of, some help on the offensive line. Hopefully reinforcements are coming after week 5, that they'll get a couple guys back. So the hope is that he can make a big difference.
Yeah, and it's odd to see this offense. They seem like they can put up points at the drop of a hat, no matter what the situation has been with injuries and things like that under Tua. I'm trying to remember previous seasons. Are slow starts common for Tua, or is it usually that he starts strong and then once the injuries pile up, he gets a little weaker as they go? Is this a typical Tua experience that we're seeing right now?
You know what? It has been, except for 2023. It kind of has been. I mean, last year you got off to a little bit of a slow start. The year before that, obviously, week 3. They're hosting Denver and scored 70 points, right? So it's definitely a little bit in character for him. Anytime he comes back from an injury, it seems like he's got a week or two to ramp it up. So it has been a little bit of a thing so far.
Yeah, so look on the defensive side. It seems like Justin Fields is going to play. He was a full participant in practice today. I think technically he's still in concussion protocol, but obviously a good sign that he was out there for the full day. The Dolphins defense has been a struggle, to say the least. What do you make of this defensive struggle? What do you think has gone wrong? And where's the hope when it comes to that defensive unit?
Struggle is putting it lightly, right? It's just been, it's been a total disaster. Through the first 2 games, besides the 2 Patriots kneel downs, they allowed points on 13 of 15 possessions. It's just been, and I think it starts up front. I had this expectation that, their front 7 was going to be fantastic. For some reason, they have not been able to create pressure on the quarterback. I do not understand why. With Bradley Chubb, Jalen Phillips, Chop Robinson, Zach Sealer got a nice contract extension, that they would be after the quarterback, and it is just non-existent, a pass rush. They haven't created a turnover yet. I think a big thing that people, maybe didn't make enough of a big deal of it was Calais Campbell, 18-year veteran, leaves, and you replace him with a first-round pick, and you're thinking, oh, this is going to go great. It's super talented in Kenneth Grant. Obviously, there's a little bit of a learning curve from an 18-year veteran to a 22-year-old rookie. And you see his backup is another 21-year-old rookie in Jordan Davis, who was picked in the 5th round. So I think there's been a little bit of a problem, up front. Front 7's been struggling, and they're allowing 145 rushing yards a game. They are getting absolutely gashed on the ground, and it's just been a massive issue. Week 1, you're seeing the stats at the end of week 1, and your 2 linebackers both have 14 tackles. You're like, something's not right there.
Yep. Yeah, and, the Jets also have not had a turnover this year on defense. So it was the same thing last week with Jets-Bucks. The Bucks hadn't had a turnover, and the Jets very nicely gave them a pick 6. So maybe Monday night's a time for the Dolphins to put one on the board. But if you look at the run game for the Jets, which is always every week, it's the key of the game. It's how many touches can Breece Hall get, whether it's in the backfield or in the passing game. Braylon Allen looked a little bit better against Tampa Bay, and that's a really good run defense. And the young lineman on the Jets, Membu, who's been the best pass blocker in football, has a really, really bad run blocking grade the last 2 weeks. So Breece Hall and Braylon Allen, and then whatever Isaiah Davis can give you, and then whoever the quarterback's going to be that can run a little, needs to make some noise against this defense that, according to Pro Football Focus, is the worst defense in football right now. Is there a hope, at least in the secondary, that even though that they made some changes, that at least that's going to get a little bit better once they start to gel? Or what's the feeling in terms of a pass defense for Miami?
Well, you would hope, right? But yeah, it's been another, mishmash. It was another thing that they sold us, a bill of goods on, right? They sent Jalen Ramsey to Pittsburgh, and that wasn't for football reasons. That was all types of other locker room stuff. And that makes sense. Sometimes you just need to get a guy out of there who's not, doesn't want to be there. But you lose him and you replace him, with basically a lot of journeymen. You have Jack Jones, who came over from the Raiders, who's always been, an interesting prospect since he was in New England. And you signed a 31-year-old Rasul Douglas off a back year 3 days after cut down day. You just have these boundary corners. You're playing a 5th round rookie in Jason Marshall Jr. in the slot, and he's never done it in his life. Now he's got a hamstring injury. So you're looking at your 5th, 6th corners playing. Minka Fitzpatrick's been decent, but next to him, it's the Ashton Davis, who, as a Jets fan, is, hot and cold. It depends on the week. And you're playing another 5th round rookie in Dante Trader Jr. It's a mishmash of guys. It's a completely different secondary from last year. It's 5 new players, essentially, as your starters, no matter who it is. and you're watching them try to gel in real time. And the secondary, where it's all about communication and playing together, these guys have never taken a snap together until week one. I mean, Rasul Douglas wasn't even there in training camp, and then you're starting him on the boundary. What did you expect kind of was going to happen?
Yeah, no, it's been a mess, but I think the Dolphins have an opportunity to get right against the Jets. Justin Fields, I mean, you couldn't look worse than he did against Buffalo. So you try to figure out, is he more like the guy against Pittsburgh, more like the guy against Buffalo? I will say I think he played so well against Pittsburgh, partly because he knows that defense really well. He practiced against it every single week for a year, and he needs to come in and be better. I am curious. We were texting about him a little bit. What has been the Jack Jones experience so far? He's one of the best run-stopping corners in football.
Yeah, he's been an experience. He hasn't been terrible. He's been okay. I would say, he passes the eye test sometimes.
Yeah.
Is the thing that, sometimes I like to look at these Pro Football Focus grades, and you just look at it, you're like, I don't know about that. You know how it goes. Like,
you don't think he's a 90-plus rated run stopper?
Sometimes you just look at these guys and you're like, I don't know about that. But he hasn't been terrible. To be honest, outside receivers have not given the Dolphins a ton of issues so far. It's mostly been that they can't cover running backs and tight ends, which is a definite problem with the linebacker situation. Tyrell Dodson's kind of out there, and he's a good player, but he's struggling in this pass coverage. Jack Jones, though, it's just exactly kind of what you expected. He's got all the talent in the world, and he shows it once in a while, and just he's handsy all the time. He's got a couple of big penalties this year. It's just been an experience, as you said.
Yeah, no, his name was called a lot against the Bills, and that's not always what you want to hear. They'll be getting a helping of Garrett Wilson, who I think is going to set a record for target share percentage on a season. 30+% every single game so far. If we're looking at just kind of comparing the two teams, where do you think the Dolphins have an edge? If the Dolphins were to win on Monday night, what do you think would have to go right for them?
They're going to have to run the ball. I mean, I think that's going to be, I actually think that's going to be the key to the game for either team. I expect something, I kind of expect a little bit of a defensive struggle, and whoever wins on the ground is going to be the team that wins this game. I think that both of them have weaknesses in that area. Both teams have a strong running back. Both teams, Miami at least loves to get away from the run as soon as something goes a little bit bad. McDaniel's got a history of the second we're down 7 points, we're going to abandon it. And it's been the only thing that's kind of working for them this year. Achane has probably been the bright spot of the team. So I think that's where they're going to have to win. They're going to have to get, they're going to have to get ground game going from Achane and stop the run, which I don't know if they can do.
Yeah, I really don't have a sense of how Monday's going to go. If I try to take my Jets fan brain out of this, I say the Jets match up very nicely against Miami. I think that they should finally have a game where they can run the ball as successfully as they did week one. But until I see it, until I see this team win a game, I don't believe they can win a game. That's how I feel.
I think it's interesting because you got two 0-3 teams, but they're a different type of 0-3, right? Like Miami's 0-3, have a $200 million quarterback that you paid a year ago, a head coach in his fourth year, and everybody's kind of fighting for their jobs. You got to get to the playoffs. You got to win a playoff game. Whereas the Jets, you're 0-3, but you got a rookie head coach. Mm-hmm. You got a new GM. There wasn't a quarterback you liked in the draft, so you went the Justin Fields route of a first-round talent. He's a first-round guy on his third or fourth team. And, but you've seen a history of that lately with the Darnolds of the world and the Genos of the world. And you saw it last year, Baker Mayfield. They went that route. And you kind of buy yourself a little bit of time when you do that. So I think they're a different type of 0-3. One has high expectations because everybody's job's on the line. Whereas one is, you kind of knew it wasn't going to be a playoff season. It was going to be a 5 or 6 win team. And hopefully, you would see some sort of success as the season went on. Now, if the Jets go to 0-4, know that Aaron Glenn welcome starts to get a little bit.
I think it's he saved himself. The team saved him. Really, Will McDonald saved him by making that game close at the end, and Tyrod Taylor being the professional that he is. The fact that they had a good fourth quarter, I mean, you go in down 3 scores in the fourth quarter, and I'm sitting there, I'm literally sitting on the floor in my living room with my toddler sitting in the seat behind me that she took from me, and I'm just like, I can't believe this is happening again, that it is a no-show performance. I end up going into my office to watch the rest of the game because she doesn't deserve to see such terrible football at such a young age. And I'm ready to just rip them apart that night. And then they save it a little bit. But for me, it's when does this defense get better, right? This defense can't make a stop whenever it matters.
It's been the Steve Wilkes story the last couple of years.
It's just brutal. And
doing the same thing in San Francisco.
Yeah, and Steve Wilkes and Robert Saleh and even Aaron Glenn, those defenses are really nice. The bend but don't break, not super aggressive. Those work really nicely when you have a high-powered offense. But when your offense isn't any good or it's mediocre at best, you need to be a game-changing defense. If you're going to make Sauce Gardner the highest paid corner in all of football, can you have him play the ball once in a while instead of hand-checking down the field for the entire game? This team can never turn anyone over. All that said, it's the same story. If you win the game on Monday, there's a soft landing in the schedule and things can possibly look up. And you said it. I don't care about this team making the playoffs. That'd be amazing. I don't think it's going to happen. The whole premise of the beginning of this podcast in the preseason was, what are the perfect situations that have to happen to get this team to 9 wins? And I just want to see that there's hope, like I've done with every regime since Rex Ryan, and on we go. Before we get to our score predictions, I want to get a sense. You got to experience the Daniel Jones revitalization in week 1. What's your favorite story outside of, the AFC East in football right now? What's been some that's jumped out to you?
Weirdly, it might be that, to be honest. I mean, I think just living in Jersey in the New York area, you're kind of seeing that. You watch so many games of Daniel Jones just, not throw the football anytime he saw a receiver open. I think it's wild that they're 3-0, to be honest. And they look like the legit. I know they played the Dolphins. I know they've had, but that game against Denver where they come back and they win fourth quarter, ending drive with the field goal there. I mean, it's wild to me that they're 3-0 and they look good. I mean, I watched that offensive line and they're scary. There is no offensive line like that in the league. I mean, Jonathan Taylor finally, he's got a quarterback that's playing with a lot of confidence. I mean, Daniel Jones might be the best quarterback he's had in like 4 or 5 years. It's wild. It's insane to me. And I would have written off, the AFC South. I think we always kind of make a joke of it, like, it's the AFC South, like somebody's got to win it. But right now, the Colts look like a true contender. And the other one I think is really interesting to me is at 4:25, I'm going to sit on my couch and I'm going to watch Ravens Kansas City, where one of them is going to be 1-3. And I don't think anybody saw that coming. Even the people who don't like the Chiefs, or nobody saw that.
No, and it feels like if this is the Chiefs that we've seen the last few years, they beat Baltimore and they kind of stay afloat and then they get hot at the right time. That's been their template. But for Baltimore was my pick to make the Super Bowl. For me, like, there's no better opportunity. You look at the AFC right now with Mahomes and that team looking old and slow and not a huge offensive output from them at all. And then, the Steelers or whatever, they don't scare me too much. They'll probably make the playoffs, but I won't be afraid of them in the playoffs. Obviously, Joe Burrow being out. There's just a lot of open territory. And then you got the two Harbaugh brothers. The Chargers and the Ravens should have an open path to make some noise. But you never know who's going to be good. It's why when we play the always fun and famous win-loss-loss-win game, you don't really understand your schedule until you start to see games happen because the Colts, that week 1 looked like a fluke. Now they look pretty good, and you got to give that Colts leadership a lot of praise. They made the tough decision to not play the quarterback they drafted, and they look like geniuses so far.
Yeah, no, they do. Daniel Jones has been a significant upgrade over Anthony Richardson. I mean, they picked him 4th overall, 2 years ago? Mm-hmm. He did not look any good for 2 years. I mean, he's been hurt a lot also, but there was never really that sense of this guy's going to be a franchise quarterback, and they were able to move on pretty quickly. And you're right. You got to give them a little bit of credit on that.
Yeah. So let's wrap this up with predictions. If you got a prediction for Monday night, what do you think the score is going to be? Who's going to come away on top?
Man, this is a tough one. I think if this game was at MetLife, I would take the Jets. The fact that Miami's had 11 days off, they had a good showing in the fourth quarter, it's at home. I'm going to go with Miami. I don't think it'll be very high scoring, even though both defenses are bad. I think that both teams are going to try to control the clock, control the run game. I say something like 21-17.
Yeah, I think that's about right. I think it's going to be ugly football. That's my guess, is that it's going to be a slapping fight until the very end. I give my final prediction on the pregame preview that I read on gangreenagainsttheworld.com, but I'm I'm torn between that. I'm leaning your way too. It is baseball season. We're not going to talk Aaron Judge. We're not going to talk any of this. I want to bring up something that I didn't warn you about. I believe it was 12 years ago that I had the biggest sports fight I've ever had in my life with anyone. It was on the air.
I know who it is.
What do you think it is?
Mark Burley.
That's 100% what I was going to bring up, because I think it is important that officially on the record, I say that Don Papa, you are correct. Mark Burley was the better pitcher. At the time, CJ Wilson was at the peak of his career. I don't know if he won a game after that fight, but faces were red. We were yelling at each other about who you'd rather have, Mark Burley or CJ Wilson. I think Burley played for like 7 more years, and CJ Wilson, I don't think, had a winning season for the rest of his career and was out like 3 years later. So I think it's only important that I end this on the record saying, Don Papa, you were correct in that big argument 12 years ago.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
I love that you remembered it. I can remember just the heat coming off our heads. Our good friend and producer, Courtney Chelf, is like staring through the glass like,
the only argument, like real argument we ever had, and it was, are you kidding me? and I was telling Kelly, my wife, that I was going to bring it up on this podcast, because I don't think on the scale of how big of a fight I was in and how wrong I was has ever been more off the charts. It was an enormous fight, and I was completely incorrect. So I'm going to end with that and say, Dom, you were correct about Mark Burley versus CJ Wilson. Listen, man, this was so much fun. I'm glad you got to come on. There's another Dolphins game, of course, that we're going to have to sit through between Dolphins Jets later in the year. Doesn't mean we won't bring you on in other parts of the year too. Maybe if there's a coaching change, we might want to hear what you got going on. But thanks so much for joining, man. Absolutely, Allan. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, take care.
The snap, pumps right, under pressure, deep over the middle, for Katsuri, caught at the 5, at the 1, is he in? No signal, touchdown! The official on the near side right signals a touchdown!
Olindo's on to attempt his 25-yard field goal. Kick is up, and it's good.
3 wide receivers. The lone setback is Leon Washington. Pennington back to throw. Has some time. Dumps it off to Washington right. Makes a move at the 20. Outside of the right to the 30. Gets loose. He's at the 35. Right sideline 40. He's to midfield. Cuts it back at the 40. To the Dolphin 30. Right sideline 20. Tripped up at the 16. Nugent is set. The Jets are set. The snap. The placement down. The kick is up. It has the distance. Good! Mike Nugent is perfect. The Jets 13. The Dolphins 10. That is your final.
I want to thank Don Papa for joining the show today. It was great to catch up. It was great to rehash an argument we had about 2 baseball pitchers 12 years ago, and I'm glad it stuck with him like it stuck with me. But overall, the Dolphins and the Jets are kind of in the same spot, 0-3. If you win, you feel like there's some hope for the season, because both schedules get pretty easy and there's some soft landing spots moving forward. For the Jets, if you lose, the season's over. For the Dolphins, if you lose, you may lose a head coach, and you have to figure out if Tua's the guy after all the money you spend, things like that. But from a Jets perspective, you win this game, you then face the Cowboys at home. You go to Europe, where they always play terribly, against the Broncos. And then you have the Bengals, you have the Panthers, and there's opportunities there to get some wins as you head towards your middle of the season bye week. And if Justin Fields does play, it's a great opportunity against a bad defense to make some noise and get the taste out of our mouths from a really difficult game against the Bills, or a terrible performance against the Bills, the worst performance of his career. And if it's Tyrod Taylor, he just has to do more of what he did in, the fourth quarter. He actually started that game pretty decently, if you remember, against Tampa. They did have a lead 6-3. They moved the ball a little bit. And altogether, this is a Dolphins defense that is very, very bad. And if you can't put up points against them, and you can't stop them, on the ground defensively, then, this team is a team that should be looking towards the draft. And the Jets are a team that are nowhere close to making the playoffs. The narrative can get really, really, really ugly quickly. If you win, there's hope, and you move on from there. So going to take a look at the 5 keys to the game coming up Monday against the Miami Dolphins. To start, QB composure. No matter who is going to play against Miami, whether it be Tyrod Taylor or if it's Justin Fields, be composed. Do not turn the ball over. The Dolphins have not turned over anyone so far this season. They have 0 turnovers, just like the Jets have 0 turnovers this year, and attack one of the worst defenses in football. Pro Football Focus has them as the worst defensive unit in the league. That's number 5. Number 4, the pass rush needs to be aggressive. There's a lot of injuries in the linebacking core. There's a shuffling happening in the secondary at basically every position. If Will McDonald and Quinnen Williams and Jawan Briggs and Harrison Phillips can be aggressive, you get some hits on Tua and maybe things go south for him. We might be looking at Zach Wilson coming into the game. And wouldn't that be something if Zach Wilson comes in and then beats the Jets as the backup? So we don't want to see that happen at all, but just throwing it out there, it is not 100% unlikely that we see Zach Wilson in this game. So the line has to get pressure, get to Tua. Tua's been afraid to take hits. He's getting skittish in the backfield, which means you may be able to turn them over finally by just getting them with a 4-man rush. Number 3, every week we talk about who's going to be the second pass catcher on this team. Josh Reynolds is practicing. If he's back, him or Mason Taylor or Arian Smith, someone needs to make I'm just talking one big splash play out of one of these cursory offensive players. Someone not named Garrett Wilson, not named Breece Hall, maybe not even named Braylon Allen, although he hasn't shown a ton so far. Someone needs to make a huge play. We saw the drops from Tyler Johnson. We saw that just this offense is limited in terms of playmakers. Another week for Mason Taylor to hopefully get a little bit more healthy from his preseason injury, a bad defense, a linebacking core where you can pick on a little bit. Can someone make a big play? That's number 3. Can one of the secondary offensive playmakers have a splash play and make some noise? Number 2, another thing we say every week, it needs to be Breece Hall. Breece Hall needs to be getting the ball more. They need to be throwing it to him more. They can't have these huge amounts of playing time in which they're not getting him the ball. It needs to change. He needs to be a beast. There's no reason he can't have 150 yards against this terrible Miami defense. It should be Breece Hall all day long. And if you got Justin Fields playing, run an option. Get him involved and help him out in the running game by having a threat for Fields to hold on to the ball too, and check it down, make Miami have to tackle you. Breece Hall needs to be a beast. Number 1, and it's a little scary, the linebacking play is going to make or break this team. Quincy Williams is on the IR, he's out. Marcelino McCrary-Ball, who had his best game of the season, although it still wasn't great, it was his best game of the season, he's on IR. This means that a lot of pressure on Jamien Sherwood, who had some bad tape last week and needs to be better. He needs to be the leader of this defense. He got his contract. Now's the time. And then you got a young guy like Cam Jones who's going to step in. He was a waiver pickup, and now you're going to have him playing meaningful minutes. And Francisco Mauigoa is going to get in there, and he's looked rough at times, but then played a good amount against Tampa and was okay. They're going to be exposed in this game. We already know there's weak points to this defense. We know Brandon Stevens is going to get picked on. Help us if we see Tyreek Hill lined up against Brandon Stevens a lot on Monday. There's different ways to shuffle up the secondary, which makes you feel like you have a shot. But with the linebackers, it is very, very thin. And the way the Jets lose this game is if Miami somehow finds a way to run wild, and then all of a sudden they're putting up a lot of yards on the ground, you then have to put more people in the box, then you have explosive plays by Tyreek. It can all really crumble if the linebacking play is really poor. So the number one thing from this team, it has to be that they are not completely empty in the middle of the field with this linebacking core. So Monday Night Football is a long way away, it feels. We've got a whole weekend to get through, and then we got to sit through all day Monday at work before it's finally time for Jets Dolphins. There's been plenty of historic moments on Monday Night Football between these two teams. The Jets are hoping to finally put a positive one up for the season, and also it's one of the few primetime games. It is nice that there's not too many night games on the schedule. This is one of them, though. So Miami against the Jets, 2 0-3 teams trying to save their season on Monday in Miami. This has been episode 17 of the Gangrene Against the World podcast. I'm Allan Simon. Thank you for listening.